All right. Welcome, everybody, to Veteran Voice Radio. Today's guest is Michael Allen, the Tactician Musician. And I think after this show, you'll get into knowing why. Welcome to
Good
the show.
stuff. Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. So, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a background on where you came from and what brought you to the military?
Man, so I was born and raised in Northwest Indiana. Honestly, not too far from Chicago, but big industrial area, steel mills primarily. Um, and my family is just very blue collar. Most of them were some type of trade, whether it was bricklayers, electricians, laborers, pipe fitters. So I was raised around that stuff. And I never really knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I always knew that I would get a job because I had family that would get me one. So I graduated high school and I'm straight out to the mill and it was great. But at 18 years old, making that kind of money, I was just a wild animal. So I did that for about 3 years and I realized man, I need to get out of here and do something different or I'm just going to be a party animal for the rest of my life. Not that the army helped with that, but I got away from a lot of the bad influences and stuff I had, and you're a product of your environment. So the people I hung out with, primarily, we all had common interests. We just like to party and, do the thing. But I did that for 3 years and then I quickly realized I needed to do something else. Enlisted in the army in 2008. So I enlisted as a combat engineer, which was great. I really enjoyed it. I did that for 12 years. I was stationed at Fort Bragg. Then I went to Carson with 4th ID, did a couple of deployments to Afghanistan. Then I PCS to Italy and I did my squad leader time in Italy, which was great. And the Atlantic Resolve stuff kind of kicked off at that time period, the Russia, Crimea stuff. So we were just all over Eastern Europe doing, partner force training with our NATO allies and stuff, which was great. Then I ended up on recruiting and I went back to my hometown. And at that point, man, I was burned out. So it actually was really good for me. It gave me time to take a knee. And I got promoted to sergeant 2 years in the army. So I'd always had soldiers under me and I loved it, but I didn't realize how much I just needed to take a knee. So having no soldiers under me on recruiting, having my family, my support system, and being able to focus on myself for a couple of years was much needed. It revived me. Because at that point, with the deployments to Afghanistan and stuff that happened in my personal life, mentally, I was not doing well. I had some shit going on that I needed to deal with, and I didn't really have the support system. Coming home gave me the time and the ability to deal with things and get closure for some things that I needed.
Yeah.
Was going to transition out though, because now I'm back home. I'm 30 at this point or something, and I have all these resources still available to me to get a good job and just be home with my family. And then I got picked up for E7 and I needed to re-enlist the pin. So I re-enlisted, went down to Fort Stewart, and I did my platoon sergeant time down there. Now, this was my first experience being mechanized. That's my least favorite type of unit in the army for sure. I learned a lot. I got to see a lot and see how just larger scale operations work in mechanized versus just, dismounted or light infantry.
Yeah.
And then one day I was my first sergeant was like, hey man, you're finishing your platoon sergeant time. We're going to move you to the headquarters platoon sergeant spot. Time for you to start stepping away from the tactical environment and into the, more strategic and administrative stuff. I'm like, I'm going to selection. I'm going to go try for special forces because at that point I still wanted to be I joined the army to do tactical stuff, to be a soldier and be with the guys. So I was willing to do whatever it took to stay in that fight. And it was so I was going to go when I was in Italy and I got hurt 2 weeks before I was supposed to go playing football like an idiot. But it was for the best because like I said, I had that time on recruiting to kind of just get my bearings and get my life together. So finally I was like, all right, it's now or never. I'm a senior E7. I'm already at time and grade, time and service. I needed waivers for both because typically they won't take guys that have been in so long.
Yeah.
They approved it. The recruiters, it was funny. The recruiters, they were like, yeah, man, statistically, you're not going to pass. You're just not going to make it. I'm like, all right, dude. They sent 13 people from Fort Stewart with me, and I was the only one that got selected. So it was pretty funny to come back. And they're like, man, you should run our PT program until you PCS to the Q course. I was like, absolutely not, dude. I'm not doing that for you guys. Not after that experience I had with them. But nonetheless, I PCS to the Q course, back to Fort Bragg. So it's full circle at this point, right? That's where it all started. So I'm back at Fort Bragg, the place I said I would never go back to unless I went for the Q course specifically. Um, did my time there, man, and then I finished the Q course, and then I showed up to fifth group, end of 21, I think it was. Yeah, around end of 21. So I've been with fifth group now since then. Did a couple deployments, couple training rotations overseas, and now I'm knocking on retirement's door. So like I just stepped down from like my tactical leadership position. I'm done with the ODA stuff. I'm going to take that desk job until I retire. So, but it's like I have two very important things going on right now. First and foremost, I just had my first child, so we have a week old at the house, so I can really focus on that. But then also it gives me opportunity to figure out the music thing and like how hard I want to push it and pursue it. So I'm just using that time now to be a husband, a father, and hopefully a aspiring musician.
Yeah, absolutely, man. At the end of the day, people don't understand how hard it really is, and it's because they don't get a look under that side of the fence. And it is a lot easier when you're part of a large scale operation because you have a large amount of people. And when you get into these squad size elements, and I mean, some of the fobs weren't much more than a squad element, really.
Yeah, man, a little outpost. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, everything is on you. It's not just like your missions, but it's also just the upkeep of the area and cleanliness and, digging the trenches if there ain't no porta johns and all that type of shit.
Yep.
So I think you've earned that time, that desk job,
Yeah.
and transferring into the music industry is not a bad gig. It seems like you like a challenge. So you definitely will be hitting a challenge in the music industry. I have learned that for sure.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it, man. The most rewarding things in my life have been the most challenging things, right? Like whether it was getting my sapper tab or getting my Green Beret or being a father and dealing with a newborn. That was probably the hardest so far. And even things like going to college, man. Like I never thought that, like when I finished high school, like I was not a good student. I just, school wasn't for me. But once I started accomplishing things in the army, like difficult things in the army, I was like, man, if I can do this, I can surely do this. So I got my associates. And if I could do this, I can get my bachelor's. And now I'm working on my master's. So it's like, I feel like chasing the dream of being a musician is also achievable if I make the sacrifices and put in the dedication and commitment, just like I did everything else in the army. Like it's not a complicated system, right? I mean, the music industry is something I'm not familiar with, but everything else I've been successful at just came through, hard work and sacrifice, and disciplines.
The thing that differs that I've learned in the music industry, and I'm not a musician, but I'm on the broadcasting side of it. And it's a very who and what can you do for them kind of industry. And a lot of these musicians, what the people don't see is they'll take every single gig, just about, it doesn't matter what it pays, because the real work comes in after they get off the stage. And that's when they're out in the crowd mingling, talking to people and trying to make connections to move up in the industry. And it is they put in a lot of work, and those are the ones that are successful. The stage that you're at now is super tough because, like you said before the show started, you're the recording artist, the sound engineer, the fucking publisher, the PA guy, I mean, you're everything. And you're still active.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get it. You gave up sleep. An 11-week-old helps you with that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. I will say, like, being positioned right here, though, right next to Nashville has been helpful. And that's something I'm definitely trying to exploit. I've been on baby leave. I took 12 weeks. I go back to work on the 11th, but my wife's been super cool. Like, baby's asleep. I'm heading down to Nashville. I'm playing writers' rounds or little showcases, and I'm meeting people. And I have yet to turn down an opportunity to play anywhere.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of paid gigs because people heard me. They're like, man, I'd love to, pay you to just come play your originals for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. So that's been cool. But other than that, the return on investment has been zero. I'm still negative from the singles, and I'm about to release an EP and all that stuff, so like there's no return on investment right now. And it's like, it's exhausting, man. But I guess being able to share my music with people is so rewarding. And the feedback I get, because it's really like service member and veteran focused, it's so fulfilling that it keeps me going. like the comments that I get, the messages that I get, the live performances, like afterwards when I do mingle and other vets come up to me and they're like, man, like I was a combat medic. I did 4 deployments in Iraq. Like I felt every word of that song, like it was my own. And like, those moments right there, what really keep me doing it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I don't know if you ever ran cross paths thing, Robert DePaul, I think his last name is. He was an SF guy.
DePrado.
Prado, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's pursuing the music, and he was in that same situation. I talked to him. He was on my show last year. He was still in the military when he was on my show.
Oh.
But I found him through Operation Encore, and
Mhm.
that's where he was kind of, hanging out with. And then he got out and decided he was going to do something else. And I think now he's back to pursuing music. But
Mhm.
he's taking that same path that you are. And yeah, location, location, location. You're doing the right things. That's exactly what you have to do is beat those streets and take gigs and remember when you don't want to get on social media to set up your reels and all that it is important that you do it.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a little bit of your music, right? So I believe we have 2 of your tracks right now. You said
Yeah.
you're getting ready to come out with an EP.
Yeah.
Let's talk about War Machine, man.
Yeah.
Where did that song come from?
Man, that song might be my one hit wonder, dude. Everyone loves that song and it's good. Yeah. So I actually wrote that one when I was in the Q course and I was just chilling and I was just trying to like be creative with my writing because a lot of my stuff is storytelling, but I never really used any type of like metaphors or, like hidden meanings and stuff. Like they'll ship you off to a factory where blacksmiths work, like, that's basic training and drill sergeants, like so most military members it probably takes them to that place immediately,
Yep.
Um, but I was just trying to be creative and step outside of my shell, like my comfort zone a little bit. And I held on to it for a while because I was so insecure and self-conscious about it
Yeah.
that I didn't think it was great, right? So yeah, the first verse is just kind of being turned into a soldier, right? Or however, whatever branch of service, you might have been in. And then the second verse is, you're deploying to combat, we fly on birds to our nest, it's just like flying to your outpost, to your fob or whatever. And then the last verse is like coming home and reflecting on some like PTSD issues that I had. And then a lot of people I've talked to have the same issues. So I just tried to sell a story, a little more, I don't know, mystical, like kind of, I guess you could say. And I didn't think that it would be like people would like it so much because when I just play the acoustic version, it's really simple. There's no bridges, there's no anything like on the guitar that's crazy. But then
Mhm.
I met a super awesome dude, a friend of mine now. His name's Edison. He has a studio in Clarksville. It's called Mind to Mass. And he really helped me bring it to life with the production, man. The dude like really sees things and hears things. And I was like, yeah, man, like this is what I want, but I don't know. I don't have the knowledge to make it sound like that. And he's like,
Yeah.
let's try these strings. So there's like violin and then there was cello. And then like he plays drums and bass. So I was like, man, like I just want it to be super chill. I think they call it a halftime on the drums initially. And then on the chorus, like I want it to pick up. So he's like, how's this? I was like, that's it, dude. That's it. So like, I definitely can't take credit for the production. Like he helps me and he still like I work with him on all my stuff and I will continue to work with him like as long as I can. But yeah, man, I like the song. Everyone likes it everywhere I go. Everyone wants me to play it and stuff. So it's cool that I have one of those.
Yeah.
And I still think it's capable of more. Like I feel like it could be in movies, it could be on good reels. It's just a matter like I don't have a publisher, so I don't have the ability to pitch to these, it's like, oh, pitch to these Spotify curators and this, that, and the third. I'm like, well, my distributor is supposed to do that. I know this song has it. Like, if there's guys out there making movies about war, like you should probably check out my song War Machine because I bet you can find a scene that fits.
Yep. No,
So,
I completely agree. The song is amazing. So you said you wrote that at the Q course. So that I mean that kind of tells me that were you one of those guys that brought their guitar during deployment?
so I didn't. I probably should have because I was always so insecure about it, man. Like
Yeah.
I had to like drink like to be comfortable playing in front of people. And looking back on it, I was younger, like everyone always loved it. Like my originals, covers, whatever. But I just like I was never I always thought I'm that douchebag at the bonfire playing Wonderwall, you know? I
Yeah.
and yeah, I wish I wouldn't have thought that way. Because I've played really inconsistently since I was like 15, off and on and off and on and off and on. And I just started sharing my music in January of this year because my most recent deployment, we were in Lebanon and we're sitting on a team house roof, and I bought a little janky guitar from the little market from the guy down the road or whatever. And the dudes come up on the roof one night and they're like, "Man, like play some of your stuff." It's like, "All right, man, here we go." You know, they're gonna make fun of me. And I started playing some songs for like I could tell that when they said it was good, it was genuine, you know? So that gave me the confidence to like come home from that deployment, and I had some downtime, and I was like, man, all right, I'm going to start a social media account. I'm going to start putting my music up there. And little by little, I was like, little people were reaching out and liking it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to record a song. I'm going to pay the money. I'm going to have it recorded, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to try and market it and promote it. And I started playing open mic nights just locally. And like the compliments I kept getting, like, man, you have a cool voice. You have your own sound, like super unique. It's refreshing. You're not the typical country artist running around Nashville, you know, like all those things, like keep giving me confidence, giving me confidence. And still, I second guess myself almost on a daily basis. And the days where it's real bad, I'll get a random message from someone. Man, you got to keep doing it. It's so good. Like, oh man, I've had like yesterday, one of my old soldiers, I don't talk to him very often, but he's like, "Hey man, he lives up in Chicago. He's like, I was just blaring your song on the radio and someone pulled up next to me and asked me what song it was." I was like, "That's crazy, dude." You know, so like little things like that. It's like I'm not a very religious man, but I always get these weird signs like just man, stay the course and keep going, you know?
Yeah, it's weird how I mean, I just had an episode on my other show that it hasn't released yet, but the gentleman that was on my show went to West Point, got drafted by the Detroit Lions.
Wow.
Only one of two people to ever get drafted from Army. And then the last minute, the Army, I mean, literally the day of signing the contract, the Army was like, "No, we changed our mind." So he went back and did 2 years in the military, got out, tried out again as a walk on, and the Lions picked him back up.
Nice.
And he played for several years. But the part that I wanted to get to was just like special operations. If you're not a type A personality, you're not going to make it. You're going to get ate alive. But the part that's pretty weird is all these people that play at elite levels, and that gentleman admitted it too. They're probably the most self-conscious people out there, right? They always feel that they have to be the best. You can't let anybody see that there's some imperfections, and it hinders. That's the demon that hinders us, you know. And it was ultimately what hindered him. So I get it, people that listeners out there that say, "Man, he's out there as a special forces guy, filled full of confidence, and he's afraid to play in front of people." No, I completely get it, and that goes. I mean, I've had enough guests on to know that that's a fact. There was another gentleman, I just released his episode, and he wanted to start making coffee and giving guys these good cups of coffee to get them to relax. And he was in the Australian military, but he was like, "I'm not going to do it because they'll call me the brew bitch." So it was like those types of things that, we all had, and I never seen it. I never noticed it. It was there. I just never noticed it when I was in, and the 10 years on that side of the fence that I did. It was just not it's not something that you pick up on. I guess we're all good actors.
Yeah.
So
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead. So I guess for me, the thing that really was able to help me get over that hump
Mhm.
and gain the confidence overall was quitting drinking, man. And I'm not like I don't preach sobriety, right? I came on your show to secretly preach sobriety and how you should get sober. For me, like I partied my whole life, I drank my whole life, and to the point where like it was just like I was bored. I have a beer, I mow the lawn, I have a beer, I'm home, I have a beer. Like I never really thought it was an issue, but like I said, you were in like I just had a lot of other things that I was suppressing. And I didn't realize I was like subconsciously drinking to deal with those things, which was major, like having a major impact on my anxiety. So I would never feel confident because I was so anxious in social settings. And it's been just over 2 years or 2 years now that I've been sober. And it was not easy. At first, actually, I felt way worse because now all these things that I thought I was okay with, I have to learn to deal with. And
Yep.
I go to behavioral health once a month, man. If there's anybody out there listening, like, doesn't matter who you are or how macho you are, if you're dude, like those resources are there. Like, seek them out and go use them. But yeah, I go to behavioral health once a month, and like that helps. But quitting drinking was the first step to getting a handle on my anxiety, and then that started to elevate my confidence. So when I'm out in front of people, like I feel okay to be on stage where everybody's looking at you. You know?
Yep. And that's just it too. Um, man, there's nothing more awkward than being on a stage and you look out the audience and they either want to go to sleep or chuck their beer at you.
Yeah.
So I get it. I don't, I used to think that I wanted to be a comedian. And man, after my time in the military, I don't think I would ever have the balls to actually get up on the stage to do it. It is just kind of a weird thing. So while you were in, right, did this ever cross your mind at any time that even with the being self-conscious and not playing in front of people, was there anything inside you that still said, I really wish I could become a musician?
No.
No?
No. Well, I guess like I don't want to say I'd given up on like when I was a kid, like I always thought it would be cool, to just be a rock star, right? Like that's a dream. Like you want to be a football player or an athlete or a rock star, an actor, whatever. I thought it was cool, but I didn't think that I was good enough, right? I didn't think I had the ability, I just all the self-doubt, right? And still like until recently did I really start thinking like, man, I think I might be onto something. I'm just going to keep going with it. But yeah, I never thought I would do it or even try or that it was a thing. That's why I've been working on my master's because I'm prepping to get out of the army and be a normal dude, which does not excite me at all. I don't believe I was put on this earth to live an ordinary life, which is
Yeah.
why I've done the army so long and so well. And now I'm going to go from one extreme, hopefully to another. And if it doesn't work though, just like trying out for SF, like it was, I'm going to give it my all and see if it works. If it doesn't, at least I tried. Same thing for music, man. Like I got a few years to dedicate to this and some resources. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it, give it an honest effort. And if it doesn't work, like at least I tried.
Yep. But you're doing something that's even bigger, at least in my opinion, right? Maybe the musicians out there would disagree with me, but one of the reasons why I really enjoy a Veteran Voice Radio is because I like the fact that we are documenting our stories, right? In through your music, like you said, you're a storyteller. And to be a good storyteller, you have to fall back on your life experiences. And in 30 years from now, we have no clue what anybody is going to say about our war and the kind of people we were. No idea what the history books are going to teach about us. But I do know that whatever goes on the internet stays there forever.
Yeah.
And through your music, through my books, through these podcasts, people can piece together what our time and our war was and how it affected us. And hopefully there's some lessons to be learned from there. But that's the rewarding part that I'm getting from this. And when I started the radio station, I did not know that was going to happen. When I literally started it to give a platform to veterans that didn't have to compete with Spotify and all these other places to get noticed. Every song gets played. The rotations are set, and I've had people, that people have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard that song. Can you put me in contact with that artist? We'd like to have a gig up here at this festival." Or, Operation Encore reaches out to me all the time and asks for connections to new artists that they hear from there. We've had artists go to Zach Brown's camp, Southern Ground, for Hero Week or his little songwriting convention. And that's exactly what I built it for. But what I'm getting from it is for me is even way bigger. And I think that's important that the musicians take that time to understand is, you are relating to a bunch of people because there's a bunch of people in your situation.
Yeah. Our generation definitely like it's like the GWAT era, I guess, it's made it a lot of, people like yourself, people like myself, and with podcasts and stuff becoming such a big thing now. It's like the primary, way to get to talk to the youth, like nowadays. It's cool to see things like this popping up. And more so, it's great to see how much veterans help veterans, man. I think that's the reason why I've been able to find some success relatively quickly is because of people like yourself, some other podcasts I've done, like giving me a platform to promote my music and share my music. Because if we don't help each other, dude, the major labels out there and everyone else, like they don't want this kind of stuff to exist because they want it all. They want to make money off of us, and our voices. So I'm super grateful just how supportive everyone has been and us
Yeah.
helping each other out, like some people have very large followings, some people have very little ones. When I was trying to promote War Machine, I had people with significant followings that were at least sharing it to their story or making a reel, which I was like, man, like, thank you. Like, you don't know like how much that helps. So
It does. And you aren't wrong. It is about making the money. And I think that's, one of the reasons that it is harder for veterans, unless you have a story that you can sell, they look at us as older, less time to recap their investment compared to that 17, 18-year-old that they could bring in as a songwriter and groom into a singer. And
mhm.
make millions off of a 20-year career, 30-year career. And I think that does make it harder for you guys. The difference is as veterans, we always figure out a way to adapt. And when we hit a wall that seems like it's beating us, we tend to just keep hitting it until we finally win. And we may never do it again after that. But I finally beat it. I conquered it. Just like you said, all of your successes and things just slowly climbed and people were giving you compliments and it just helped build your confidence to get to where you're at today. I think that's important because that same thing is also the double-edged sword when we're digging ourselves into a hole and somebody says, "Are you done? Are you ready for some help?" And we say, "No, hold my beer." And we keep digging even deeper. I
Yep.
can do it myself. I'll get out. And that is the problem. But I think there's stories to be told through music. And I think the therapy out there happens in multiple ways for the musicians. How have you found some solace or some peace and quiet from demons when you are playing music? How does it help you?
Man, so I guess going back again, because I just started playing guitar again around the time I quit drinking. I literally Googled one day, I was like, how to be more present. Because, like, you're always somewhere else, you're in the TV or on your phone or whatever. I was like, how to be more present. It's like the first thing that popped up, play an instrument. It's like, yo, let me go blow the dust off this guitar. I'm going to start playing again. And that was around the same time I really started going to behavioral health regularly and I was quitting drinking. It was very difficult. And all these things that I thought that I dealt with, like I had inside, I'm like, I can't go to the behavioral health specialist every day. Well, I probably could, right? But like, so now I'm able to get these things off my chest through writing a song. Like I said this to a few people, but there are a lot of things I will say in the music I write that I would never say, in a conversation,
Right.
just a casual conversation with just complete strangers. But in my music, like I'm either posting it online or I'm on a stage in front of a bunch of complete strangers and telling them this, like intimate story about my life or an experience that I went through. And it helps, man. It's like refreshing. It's like a weight off my shoulders when I can share that. And then, again, like the fulfilling aspect is when others relate. So yeah, I honestly sometimes it's like if I don't work out in the morning, I always joke like I'm a grumpy bear if I don't wake up and work out. But like if I don't pick up my guitar for at least like 10, 20 minutes out of the day, like I feel like I get a little frustrated. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it. And that's what a lot of veterans have all said is that time when they're up on that stage and they're playing, they're present. They're not thinking about everything else that happened in the past or even what they got to do the moment they get off that stage. It's just them, that stage, the guitar and the song and the crowd. And they're engaged and it does help. And I think also, we do good with structure, right? If there's no control to the chaos, we tend to not really know what to do. We kind of bounce around, right? But all these programs that are out there that help veterans, the ones that I see succeed are the ones that have structure, follow this rules, these steps. This is how you do it. And I think playing an instrument is exactly that. There's structure, there's discipline, there's all these things that relate very well to veterans that makes you think, focus, and concentrate. And it eliminates some of that anxiety. For me, podcasting was exactly what you just said. By the end of my first season, I realized I was feeling better, doing better, drinking less, sleeping better because I'm talking with somebody that can relate to what I'm saying. I think that's important. I think the creative side of us is something that we don't really know we have, but you add that with our discipline and man, it's a powerful tool.
Yeah. Man, it's cool. Like you were saying, like these conversations. So when I first started doing the podcast, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try and do this so I can promote my music. But now, like, I look forward to these conversations with like-minded individuals because everyone I've done up to this point, I just had one. I think I did one last week. The conversations are just genuine, man. Like we have all this common ground, and we're just shooting the shit. I never met you until today. So yeah, it's like it makes you feel good, man. Just having the talks. Yeah, I enjoy it.
And the part that it's obvious, I mean, what is the career of a SEAL after the Navy? Well, you have to sell coffee, then you have to write a book, and then you have to make a movie. And, there's all
Yeah.
these. But the point being, we do have some in the 20-year war that we fought. We do have some stories. We do have some lessons that can be learned if you follow that war. And I hope the VA and the government is taking notice of when you're in a war that goes through more than one generation, how you reach those people may be different. And
Hmm.
I came in 94, and by the time the war started, I was considered an old guy. You're out there fighting, but then all of a sudden I'm getting ready to retire and I'm getting new privates. I had one private tell me he joined the army because he thought it was going to be like Call of Duty.
Man,
Can't
I have
make
a
that.
funny story about that too.
Go ahead, man.
So when I was on recruiting, we had this kid come in and he's like, yeah, so I'm just like talking to him and I'm like, yeah, so what do you think you want to do like in the army? And he's like, well, like I'd really like to be a sniper. I was like, oh, like do you hunt? Are you a gun enthusiast? All these things, like shooting a rifle is not that simple.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. He's like, well, no, but I play Call of Duty and I use the sniper rifle a lot and I'm really good at it. Dead ass serious. And so where my desk was, I was looking at all the other recruiters looking at me and they're laughing. And it took every ounce of professionalism I had to not just laugh in this kid's face because those things happen like pretty frequently. But this one was like, he was just so serious. I was like, I got you, man. Needless to say, I took him to the Navy office and he joined the Navy,
Okay.
which did not make my station commander happy, but he was not. And I would get in a lot of trouble for that because if I didn't think you were a good fit for combat, I couldn't tell you not to do it, right? I couldn't tell you can't be infantry or combat engineer or whatever you want to be. But I would recommend that you didn't because it's not that easy and it is a different animal. But this kid was very smart. His ASVAB was super good, but I was like, I think, and he was a little overweight. So I know the Navy was a little bit more lenient at that time with the height and weight standards or whatever. But could have we got him to lose it? Yes. But at the end of the day, he ended up joining the Navy probably to do some nuclear submarine shit or something. But it was just funny.
No.
No, I don't think.
And my last deployment, I was out at Stewart, and I was standing there with watching everybody else pack up for their deployment. I was close to retirement. I was supposed to go to the deployment, and Obama cut the numbers of how many people it can be in Afghanistan, and we'd already cut as many soldiers as we could, so they started cutting leaders, and so I had to go unseal my container, pull all my bags out, and they put me in charge of the rear D guys. For the listeners who don't know, your rear D guys are not your all stars. Those are not the guys that
No.
they decided to leave back because they did good as a reward. But I knew my unit was not ready for Afghanistan. Third ID had never been to Afghanistan. It has always been Iraq. So this was the first time my unit had ever fought or went to Afghanistan. And our battalion lost 9 people.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that came from young leadership. They just were not trained up and ready for how different it is from Iraq to Afghanistan. And I was standing there as they were packing up their bags, And I remember telling this kid, I can't remember who it was. He was a private. I said, "Hey, tomorrow I want you guys to bring in all your class A's." And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, we're going to start that stupid shit already?" I said, "What stupid shit?" He said, "Class A inspections." I said, "This isn't an inspection. This is me making sure that you're prepared because you're going to be wearing them quite a bit." And I wasn't wrong, man. It is, and it does come from training and trained up and being ready to handle it. So I appreciate you doing that. I wish more recruiters would do that because we're just putting people at risk.
Yeah, man, I took that job very personal. Like, I didn't want to mislead anybody, because like it was my reputation on the line, but it was also their life on the line. So it was like I just wanted to be good and be honest with them.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of bad recruiters out there, and there's a lot of pressure that gets put on them by usually their station commanders, man. Like usually the guys who cross over to be permanent recruiters, and not all of them. My first station commander was very much like that. The second one I got while I was there, he was super cool. He supported the things I would do if I would try to discourage someone from taking a job, because I didn't think it was right for them. But yeah, man, it doesn't help the Army when you lie to someone or mislead them or don't give them the truth, and then they join and they hate it. Now they're a shitbag anyway. You're not giving them any expectation management. I'm like, yeah, man. I was like the first 2 years of the Army, I hated it. I wanted to get out. I thought I made the biggest mistake of my life, and then I put stripes on my chest. And that mindset never changed. The fact that I still had good work ethic and I was still a high performer, but I still didn't like it. It was culture shock. I'd never been away from home. Like I was grandma's boy. Like I had a big Italian family back home. I was like, what did I get myself into? Like I went from making a whole bunch of money at the steel mill to making private money living in the barracks. I was like, dude, this was a terrible mistake. But then as soon as I pinned E5 and then I went to Afghanistan, and then like I started to see like the bigger picture, and that was what he's got me to this point today. So
Yeah, it is. I think it's probably one of the most rewarding jobs to be a leader in the military. I really do. I still to this day have soldiers that call me and ask my advice and like that. And it makes me feel good that they feel like they can still reach out to me. So I think that is extremely important. So how much time were you mostly in Afghanistan, or was it kind of split evenly, or
my two deployments with the conventional Army were to Afghanistan.
Afghanistan?
Basically, almost the same AO. Our first deployment was 2009 to 2010. And that one, we actually were just a maneuver element because I was a combat engineer, but we had an infantry mission. So, like, we had combat engineers coming and doing route clearance for us so we could go do our, key leader engagements or presence patrols and movement to contacts, and poppy ratification was one of the big ones. So yeah, that was the first deployment. Then the second deployment, we got hit, same AO, but we did route clearance. That shit sucked, man. Luckily, I was a dismounted team leader at that. So I was like, just let me out of the truck. And our main threat was command wire. So like, normally you'd get to your route that you knew they would hit us on all the time, and we just kick out the dismounts and we would just clear on foot as far as we could. But man, those were some long days and some long walks. But yeah, that was that. Then I PCS the 173rd, thinking like, all right, they're still on rotation in Afghanistan, but that was when Russia invaded Crimea, and that whole thing kicked off. And then Atlantic Resolve became the huge priority. 1/3 that was theirs; they owned it, so there no more Afghanistan. And even then, like I've been chasing the dragon my entire career since I got back at the end of 2012 from the second one. And once I went 73rd, nothing. Went to recruiting. It's like, cool, I really needed this. And now I'm ready to get back after it and train soldiers and go to combat. Afghanistan. Still a thing. It's not super kinetic, but they're still killing people over there. Like, I'm going to go back. And then I ended up in Fort Stewart, and they go to deployment to Korea,
Yeah.
So
They sure did.
yeah. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to selection. And then in the Q course, man, is when we basically retreated from Afghanistan, which had me questioning my entire career and really messed with me, honestly, because I felt like I'd lost friends over there for no reason, blood, sweat, and tears, and years of my life for no reason for us to do it like that. I felt like the administration really turned their back on the entire GWAT population at that time.
They did. They absolutely did. There's a episode, I believe it's episode 68 on the Sean Ryan show. Marine that I believe he was a Marine. I'm pretty sure he was Marines.
At Abbey Gate or whatever?
Yeah, Abbey Gate. Yep.
Yeah.
And, man, our leadership had gotten weak. When he
Mhm.
his story about how he asked permission to fire, they had positive ID on the bomber from the Brits agreed that that guy was the one, the original sniper, the guy that got injured, who originally seen him and called everybody, and then the battalion commander, when he came down to the gate and he looked at that person and he agreed that is him. And then he asked, he said, "Do I have permission to fire?" And he said, "I can't give you that." And he said, "Who can?" And he said, "I don't know." And he turned around and walked off.
That's crazy.
You know,
Yeah.
man, early in the war, that would have never happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it was the whole hearts and minds shift. So my first deployment there, like I said, 2009. The hearts and minds thing wasn't a big push then, and then I went back in 2012, and you went from like your escalation of force, right? It was like show, shove, and then it was shout, show, shove.
yeah,
And then soldiers just started questioning themselves. Like, hey man, you have an inherent right to self-defense. If you feel threatened, don't waste your time. Shoot them before they shoot you or one of your buddies.
yep,
There needs to be zero hesitation. The bullet travels way too fast for you to turn to someone and say, "Do I have permission to?" And then you're dead. You didn't even finish your sentence, dude. It's
yep,
crazy.
y
It's just crazy. It's extremely disappointing. It's war. People are going to get killed. We went there for what reason? I don't even know anymore. But at the end of the day, it's combat, man. Like, and that's why your commander gives your rules of engagement. You know what your mission is, you know the intent, and you know your rules of engagement. Like if you at least, even if you're the private new guy who paid attention to nothing in the op order, at least you should know your rules of engagement because you have a sense to know if you're in danger or not and you need to kill somebody.
yep, you are 100% correct. That part of the brief is what's going to not just save your life over there, but also keeping you having a life when you come back, so you're
Yep.
not put in jail. Man, we fought for 20 years with one hand tied behind our back, that is for sure. You know, there's no way or any other way to look at it that way. You know, just like you said, I was thinking in my head, you know, how kicking in doors turned into knocking on doors and waiting for them to hide everything. It was like, "Okay, you guys hide your weapons, we'll come in and find them. It's a fun game," you know?
Yep.
And it it's frustrating because like you said, we were over there. We fought for 20 years in a war that shouldn't have last 20 days.
Yeah. Military industrial complex, man. So many people get rich off it, especially politicians who have tips on what contracts are about to be awarded to what companies. Let me invest in these guys before their stock skyrockets because I know that we're about to award them this $1 billion contract for all this military equipment.
Yep. Yeah. It definitely is. That's exactly how it is. And what is the product that that industrial plant makes? The war machine.
Yeah, dude. So it's funny, like I, y- it's hard to like. I loved my military career. I love the people. It's been the highest highs and the lowest lows. But the army itself and the some of the senior leadership, like and the political aspect that really determines what we do or don't do, like I despise, and I kind of makes me despise the government as well. And I don't want to feel that way because I gave up to this point almost 18 years of my life willing to go and fight when needed and die if needed for my country. And I don't feel like the politicians in the positions that really make the calls give a shit about people like me or you or the younger guys that are raising the right hand willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice. I don't feel that they do. So with
Yep.
my music, I had someone like, man, like I'm surprised you don't like try and push this to the army or like get them to endorse anything. I'm like, bro, I'm not glorifying this shit. I'm telling the raw truth about what we really go through. And they're not going to want to promote my music because it's going to let people know that like in combat, like you might kill someone, you might feel really guilty about it, or you might come home and deal with some PTSD. Like I'm not that guy. I'm going to be very raw and unfiltered with everything I write from now until the end of my musical career.
Yeah. And I think that is why the veteran artists out there, people when they hear them, they're like, "Holy crap! Why isn't this guy on the big company radio?" And it is because of our authenticity. We're not telling made up fake stories that was wrote by a guy that lives in a townhouse downtown in Los Angeles or whatever. You know, we're telling stories from our life experiences and how we interpret them and how we are feeling and you just don't get any more authentic. And that's why the music that comes from you guys reaches people so deeply because at the minimum, it gives them the ability to pull back that veil and see what really happened. So I think it's a big deal that we keep that alive, the storytelling aspect of it. So I do like the fact that you're raw and unfiltered because I think it's important.
It makes me a little frustrated when you have these like famous artists that are signed to these major labels. And I appreciate guys writing patriotic songs
Yeah.
and telling other people's stories so that it can be heard. But just tell your own story, man. Like, leave that to guys like me. Like, there's a lot of other very talented musicians out there, probably most of us all independent artists and unsigned. And there are some that are gaining traction and getting noticed more. But leave that stuff to us, you know? Like, don't pander or whatever, like, because you know it will sell to a whole generation of GWAT guys. Like, I forget what the veteran population is in America right now. You know, I don't know. It like again, I appreciate it, but I think that there's too many talented veteran musicians out there that can tell those stories instead of, there's organizations out there that will have a soldier come in and pair them with a songwriter so that the songwriter can play this, they share their stories and the songwriter writes it into a song. And I think that's really, really cool. But I think they should look a little harder for musicians like myself who can do the exact same thing. I just don't have the label behind me, or I never made a #1 hit record. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna call any organizations out, but there are people out there that can do that. So you have veterans talking with veterans. So when they tell that story behind the microphone, the emotion matches the lyrical content.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's where things are heading, to be honest, right? It used to be you had to be successful, you had to be signed. And now it's gotten to the point where you're seeing indie people that are successful. And so I think with these indie radio stations like Veteran Voice Radio and there's a few others out there that are veteran related. MBR is another one, and we're gaining traction on those companies. We're giving them a platform. I'm fixing to here hopefully by the end of this year transfer over into not get rid of the radio stations, but offer the ability for on demand play. Maybe there's somebody out there that has a favorite song and they want to play it and not have to wait until it comes around in rotation. So I do think over time, and the projection is that the podcasting industry is supposed to grow by like 173 billion within the next like 5 years. Yeah, it just shows that I think people have lost faith in a lot of the mainstream media, the mainstream way of doing business, the old way. There's I think people are starting to seek out individuals like you. And I think that's kind of one reason why Spotify was so big and why they've grown so much is because they are at the time were the main ones giving indie artists besides what is it, Bandcamp or whatever, and a few others. But Spotify was the big one. So I think it's awesome that the indie world is growing, and that opens up doors for you, individuals like yourself. And it's a fine line too. The other thing I do notice is none of the veterans want to glorify their service time, right? They would rather not make it than the only reason why they made it was because of their story, right? They would much rather be able to stay indie and be authentic than to be put in front of people and not considered a real musician, but you're there just because you had a story.
Man, I had a small label hit me up last week, and we had some interesting email conversations because the president told me one thing on the phone call. I talked to someone else. I sent them the workbook of songs like they had asked, and they gave me some feedback and they made me an offer and like, hey, we'll want to publish X amount of songs for a 50-50 split, but we also want to redo or give you a 50-50 split production. So basically for a song, they would match me however much the song costs. Like let's say it was $5,000 to produce that song, they would match me $2,500. And I'm like, well, 2 of the songs I sent you were fully mastered, like that's my sound. What they wanted to do is change my sound a little. And I'm like, no, this is who I am, man. I'm more of like, alternative rock kind of grungy vibe is like what I'm going for, or just what I feel like comes out of me. I'm not trying to go be a country pop singer because I'm close to Nashville and I have good songs that you think you can reproduce to fit to be more marketable, right? Like that's not, I don't care. I'm not going to do that. So
Yep. And yeah, they must have been a very small label because most record labels, the bigger guys, they're more like some of them are 95.5.
yeah,
And
that's crazy.
yeah, I don't know how some of these guys live off of 5%, because it's not like every gig you don't start out just because you got signed doesn't mean you start out selling out auditoriums.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, brother, I'm gonna give you that opportunity to bring you forward and tell everybody where your ats are and where they can find your music and all that good stuff.
Yeah, cool. Hey, so again, Michael Allen, the Tactician Musician, you can see that's what all my social media handles are for the most part. But if you go to my Instagram, the Tactician Musician, you can click on the link. There's a link tree. It'll give you all my streaming platforms. I'm on all the major ones. I got 3 songs up there right now, but I have an EP coming out at the end of this month. So I got 4 more good ones coming to you guys. Give them a listen, man. Follow me on social media. That's a big one. Something really important for independent artists like myself is actually to follow me on the streaming platforms and to like the song and add any to your playlist also helps. Honestly, it's like I'm in a war against the algorithm. So I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate your support. And I appreciate you having me on Veteran Voice Radio today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been an honor. Your music is, like you said, authentic and when I heard it and we started playing it, man, I jammed to it as well. Whenever I'm in the car, I've got the radio stations on. So there's a lot of guys out there that I really like, and I think the right person listening to the station could change their life, and I think that's really cool. So, well, I appreciate everybody that's followed. Listen, make sure you check out Michael Allen's music. If you have not heard a War Machine, make sure you do so. You can find it on Spotify if you want it on demand, or you can listen to Ranger Rockwave and hit it up there. So, y'all take care, be safe, and don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.